The air conditioning in the restaurant feels arctic against my skin, but it does nothing to cool the burning in my chest. My fork, halfway to my mouth with a piece of salmon, freezes. Every sound in the room, the clatter of plates, the murmur of conversations, the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, dissolves into a roaring static. I am blind to everything but them. They are sitting at a small table near the back, tucked away in an alcove, but I see them as if they are spotlighted on a dark stage. His hand is on her arm, his thumb stroking her skin just above the elbow. Her head is tilted back, laughing at something he just said. Her hair, a bright, impossible blonde, catches the low light. My husband and his secretary. The secretary I barely knew, the one with the syrupy voice who sometimes called our house asking for him late in the evening. The one I dismissed as just the secretary. He looks happy. Genuinely, completely happy. A way he hasn't looked at me in years. His smile reaches his eyes, crinkling the corners in a familiar way that now feels like a physical blow. Her laugh is light, airy, the sound of someone utterly carefree. They lean into each other, a private world existing just between them in this crowded room. The salmon falls from my fork, unnoticed, landing with a soft splat on my plate. My own breath hitches, a small, sharp sound that seems deafening in the sudden silence of my world. My hands start to shake, just slightly at first, then uncontrollably. I grip the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white, trying to anchor myself to something, anything, in the face of this impossible reality. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. We had plans tonight. He said he had to work late. A big deal, he'd said, couldn't be interrupted. Lies. Every word a carefully constructed lie, built over weeks, maybe months, maybe even years. The little glances, the hushed phone calls, the sudden trips, the late nights at the office that stretched later and later. All painted with the same brush of deceit. And I, the idiot wife, had believed it all, trusted it all, built my life on it. My eyes sting, but I refuse to cry. Not here. Not now. Not where he might see me and know he broke me. I stare at them, letting the image burn itself into my memory. His tie is slightly askew. Her dress is the color of emeralds. Small, irrelevant details that will forever be etched into the landscape of my betrayal. They are talking again, leaning closer still, sharing a secret that is tearing my world apart. I want to scream. I want to walk over there, flip their table, shatter the illusion of their happiness with the truth of their ugliness. But I can't move. I am frozen, a statue carved from ice and pain, watching my life unravel in agonizing slow motion just across the room. The cold from the air vent seems to seep into my bones, chilling me from the inside out. This is the moment. The moment everything changes. The before and after. And I am standing squarely in the awful, empty space in between. If this story of betrayal and transformation hits a nerve, if you've ever faced something that broke you, but somehow made you stronger, tell me about it in the comments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me keep telling these stories. Thank you. Life before that moment feels like a sepia-toned photograph, faded and distant. We had a life that, from the outside, looked solid, enviable even. A beautiful house in the suburbs, 2 successful careers. Mine, in corporate strategy, was demanding, analytical, requiring long hours and sharp focus. His, in some nebulous area of finance at a mid-sized firm, seemed less intense, more stable. We were the couple who had it together. The ones who had navigated the tricky waters of merging 2 ambitious careers and building a home. I met him when I was fresh out of business school, full of fire and ready to conquer the corporate world. He was steady, kind, he laughed at my jokes, and he seemed genuinely proud of my ambition. We built our life brick by brick, shared dreams and quiet evenings, the comfortable rhythm of 2 people who knew each other intimately. There were no grand declarations, no fireworks, just a deep sense of partnership. We were a team. We supported each other's careers, celebrated promotions, weathered setbacks. Or so I thought. Looking back, I see the cracks now, faint lines that I smoothed over, rationalized away. The gradual decrease in physical affection. The way our conversations became more about logistics than connection. The increasing distance in his eyes when I talked about my work, the subject that consumed so much of my time and energy. I was busy, always busy. My career wasn't just a job, it was a part of my identity, a source of pride and purpose. Maybe I didn't make enough time for him. Maybe I took his steady presence for granted. These are the questions that would gnaw at me later, insidious whispers in the dark. But at the time, it just felt like the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. The passionate fire gives way to a warmer, steadier glow. The excitement of newness is replaced by the comfort of familiarity. We were comfortable, maybe too comfortable. We stopped really seeing each other. I saw the reliable husband, the comfortable companion. What did he see? Apparently, not enough. He had worked at the same company for years. It wasn't a flashy place, but it was solid. He seemed content there. His secretary, a woman named Sarah Jenkins, had been with the company for maybe a year or so. Young, I assumed, though I never really thought about it. Pleasant enough voice on the phone. She was a non-entity in my world, a background detail in the narrative of his professional life. The idea that she could become a central figure, a disruptor, a wrecking ball, never crossed my mind. Why would it? Our life felt too secure, too well established to be threatened by something so cliché. The night I saw them in the restaurant was the official end of the before, the comfortable illusion shattered, leaving behind jagged edges and a cold, hollow ache. I somehow managed to pay the bill, my hands trembling so violently I almost dropped my credit card. I walked out of the restaurant on autopilot, my legs stiff and unresponsive. The cool night air did nothing to clear the fog in my head. I got into my car, but I couldn't drive. I just sat there, the image of them burned onto the inside of my eyelids, replaying the scene again and again. His laugh, her hair, the way he touched her arm. Eventually, hours later, it felt like I drove home. The house was dark. He wasn't there, of course. He was still with her, finishing their intimate dinner, living the lie he had built. I walked through the silent rooms, the house suddenly feeling vast and empty. Every object, every photograph, every shared space felt tainted. This wasn't my home anymore. It was the stage for his deception. I waited up. I don't know what I planned to do. Confront him? Beg him? Scream until my throat was raw? When his car finally pulled into the driveway around midnight, I was sitting on the living room sofa in the dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. He came in quietly, trying not to wake me. The click of the lock, the soft tread of his shoes on the hardwood floor. He paused when he saw me sitting there. Even in the dim light, I could see the sudden tension in his shoulders, the way he froze. He knew. He knew I knew. There was no need for words, not yet. "You're supposed to be working late," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the hurricane raging inside me. He didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, coat still on, like a trespasser in his own home. Then he sighed. A deep, weary sound that somehow infuriated me more than anything else. Like I was an inconvenience, a problem he now had to deal with. I wasn't, he finally admitted, his voice low. "I know," I said. "I saw you." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I watched him, waiting for an explanation, a denial, a plea, anything. What I got was a shrug. Look, we need to talk," he said, finally moving into the room, dropping his briefcase by the door like any other night, a horrifying return to mundane domesticity in the face of cosmic betrayal. "Talk." My voice rose slightly, a sliver of the anger finally breaking through. "You think we can talk about this?" "Yes. We need to be adults about this." Be adults, the sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh. He was sleeping with his secretary, destroying our life, and he wanted to be adults about it. "You're having an affair," I stated, wanting to hear the words out loud, to make them real. "With Sarah Jenkins." He flinched slightly at her name. Another confirmation. Yes, he said, his voice barely audible now. It's yes. And that was it. No grand confession, no dramatic scene, no tearful apologies. Just a simple, brutal confirmation. It was like being hit by a truck, but instead of pain, there was just numbness. A cold, profound emptiness where my heart used to be. The inciting incident wasn't just seeing them or his quiet confession. It was the calm, almost indifferent way he admitted it. It wasn't a mistake he regretted. It was a choice he had made. He wasn't sorry for hurting me. He was just sorry he got caught. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of pain, practicalities, and profound loneliness. The immediate aftermath of the revelation felt surreal. Living in the same house became unbearable. Every corner held a memory, now twisted and ugly. His presence was a constant reminder of the betrayal. I moved into the guest room, the small, unfamiliar space, a physical manifestation of the distance that had opened between us. We attempted to talk, to negotiate the terms of the end of our marriage, but every conversation devolved into accusations and hurt. He minimized his actions, somehow framing it as my fault. I was too focused on work. I wasn't emotionally available. He felt lonely. The gaslighting was subtle at first, then became more overt. He painted me as the cold career woman who had neglected him, leaving him no choice but to seek comfort elsewhere. It was a narrative designed to absolve him of guilt and shift the blame onto me. And part of me, the part that was racked with doubt and pain, almost started to believe him. Had I failed him? Was this my fault? The early struggles were intensely personal. The loss wasn't just a husband. It was the loss of a future I had envisioned, a partnership I had relied on, and the comfortable identity of being a wife. I felt adrift, untethered. Friends tried to offer support, but explaining the depth of the wound felt impossible. The shame was immense. Not just the shame of being cheated on, but the shame of having been so blind, so trusting, so foolish. Simple things became monumental tasks. Getting out of bed in the morning felt like lifting 1,000 pounds. Eating was a chore, food tasteless. Sleep was elusive, replaced by hours of staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, searching for clues I had missed. My focus at work suffered. I made mistakes, missed deadlines, my usual sharp intellect dulled by the constant thrum of pain. My boss noticed, and I had to confess, awkwardly explaining that I was going through a divorce. The legal process added another layer of stress. He was suddenly represented by a shark of a lawyer, and his reasonable facade dropped completely. He fought over assets, tried to minimize his financial obligations, made demands that felt petty and cruel. It wasn't just about dividing property. It felt like another way for him to inflict pain, to punish me for discovering the truth, for daring to exist without him. The joint accounts were drained, credit cards maxed out, leaving me scrambling to cover immediate expenses. I had my own money, of course, but the sheer vindictiveness of his actions was a shock. This wasn't the man I married. Or maybe he was, and I just never truly knew him. Sarah Jenkins wasn't subtle. Once the divorce was underway and their relationship became official, they started appearing together in public. I saw them at a local coffee shop, walking hand in hand in the park near our old house, even dining at another restaurant I used to love. Each sighting was a fresh wound, a reminder of what they had taken from me, flaunting their happiness built on the ruins of mine. She was young, vibrant, everything I felt I was no longer. The comparisons were unavoidable, corrosive. She had youth, simplicity, and a fresh start with my husband. I had baggage, heartbreak, and the messy end of a decade-long marriage. The rising challenges mounted. The divorce proceedings dragged on, becoming increasingly bitter and expensive. My financial situation, though not dire thanks to my career, became precarious with the legal fees and the disruption to my focus at work. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like I was drowning, pulled under by waves of grief, anger, and humiliation. I couldn't escape the feeling of being a victim, powerless against the tide of events. I tried therapy, meditation, exercise, all the things you're supposed to do. Some helped marginally, providing brief moments of respite. But the core pain remained, a heavy weight in my chest. I felt defined by the betrayal, reduced to the woman who was left for a younger secretary. My professional achievements, my intelligence, my resilience, none of it seemed to matter in the face of this fundamental failure. There were days I considered giving up. Just walking away from everything, my career, my home, this whole painful life. The despair was a physical entity wrapping around me, whispering insidious suggestions. What was the point? What did I have left? The deepening crisis hit when my performance review at work was disappointing. Not terrible enough to warrant firing, but a clear indication that my personal life was impacting my professional one. My boss was understanding but firm. I needed to regain my focus, or my trajectory in the company would be stalled. This was a wake-up call. My career wasn't just a job anymore. It was my lifeline, my identity separate from my failed marriage. If I lost that too, I would have nothing. Around the same time, his lawyer proposed a settlement that was not only financially unfair but felt deliberately insulting. It was clear he was trying to punish me, to leave me struggling. Reading the proposed terms, seeing how little he valued the years we had spent building our life together, how eager he was to shed me and our shared history, something inside me snapped. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a cold, quiet click. Lying in that unfamiliar guest bed, staring at the ceiling, the despair that had consumed me for months began to recede, replaced by a hard, sharp anger. An anger that felt clean and powerful. I was tired of being the victim. Tired of being defined by his actions. Tired of hurting. I wasn't going to let him or his secretary destroy me. They had taken enough. They had taken my husband, my marriage, my sense of security, my peace of mind. But they would not take my future. They would not take my career. They would not take my self-respect. This was the midpoint shift. The moment the narrative in my head changed from one of loss and despair to one of survival and, eventually, something colder, more determined. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was going to fight back. Not in a messy, emotional way. No, I would use the tools I knew best: strategy, analysis, and relentless execution. I would rebuild my life, brick by brick, making it stronger, higher, more formidable than it had ever been. And if, in the process, I could ensure that those who had wronged me faced consequences, well, that would just be a byproduct of my success. A sweet, necessary byproduct. I doubled down on work. I put in 18-hour days, fueled by caffeine and a simmering rage that I channeled into laser focus. I took on the most challenging projects, the ones nobody else wanted. I traveled relentlessly, escaping the painful familiarity of my home and immersing myself in new environments, new challenges. My performance improved dramatically. The mistakes stopped. My sharpness returned, honed to a finer edge by the bitterness I carried. My company, a large multinational, was in an aggressive acquisition phase, looking to expand our market share. One particular acquisition target was a mid-sized firm in a complementary industry. This project landed on my desk. It was complex, high stakes, and required deep analysis of the target company's financials, market position, and organizational structure. It was exactly the kind of challenge I needed to distract me, to consume my energy, to prove to myself and everyone else that I was still capable, still formidable. I plunged into the due diligence with a fervor that bordered on obsession. I dissected their balance sheets, analyzed their market strategy, evaluated their key personnel. Names, numbers, data points. It was a language I understood, a world where emotion was secondary to logic and facts. This felt safe, controllable, unlike the chaos of my personal life. The divorce was finalized during this period. It was a brutal, clinical process that left me feeling emptied out and scarred. The settlement was unfair, just as I had anticipated, but I didn't fight it beyond a certain point. I needed it to be over. I signed the papers, feeling a strange mix of relief and profound sadness. The chapter was closed, but the scar remained. And my ex-husband? He seemed to have moved on seamlessly. He was living with Sarah Jenkins, playing house in a new apartment. Their social media was public, a carefully curated feed of happy couple photos, hiking trips, cozy dinners, smiling selfies. Each post was a small, deliberate jab, a reminder of the life he had built with her. I blocked him, of course, but mutual friends still occasionally let slip details. They were happy, building a new life. Good for them, I thought, the words dripping with sarcasm even in the privacy of my own mind. Let them have their fleeting happiness. I had bigger things planned. The acquisition process was reaching its critical stage. My team and I had compiled mountains of data, presented our findings to the executive committee, and received the green light to proceed with the final negotiations. It was a major professional victory, the culmination of months of relentless work. Then came the day I received the target company's detailed organizational charts and employee roster. It was a thick binder, full of names and positions. I was flipping through the pages, cross-referencing departments, when I saw it. A name, unremarkable in itself, but placed next to a title that sent a jolt through me. Sarah Jenkins, Executive Assistant to the Head of Department. Below that, the name of the Head of Department. It wasn't my ex-husband, thank God, but the company name was the same. His company. The solid, mid-sized firm where he had worked for years. The firm I was now in the process of acquiring. My blood ran cold for a moment, then boiled with a sudden, intense heat. Sarah Jenkins. The secretary. The woman who had helped him dismantle my life. She worked there, in the company that would soon be my company's subsidiary. The irony was so profound, so perfectly, brutally poetic, that I almost laughed. This was the turning point, the moment the universe seemed to hand me a tool, sharp and gleaming, and whisper, here. This wasn't just business anymore. It was fate. It was cosmic convergence. It was the opportunity one hadn't even known I was waiting for. A cold calm settled over me. My previous anger, the raw, messy emotion, solidified into something harder, sharper. This wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense, not about petty sabotage or public scenes. This was about power, about demonstrating, without a shadow of a doubt, that I was not the victim, not the discarded wife, but a force to be reckoned with. And they, in their smug complacency, were about to step directly into my path. I reread the organizational charts, focusing specifically on her department. I noted her position, her reporting structure. I delved deeper into the company's internal policies regarding personnel. Every piece of information felt like a weapon I was gathering, cleaning, sharpening. The negotiation phase was intense, filled with late-night calls, strategic maneuvering, and high-stakes discussions. My focus was absolute. I needed this deal to go through. More than just a professional success, it had become a personal imperative. Failure was not an option. I was negotiating not just for my company's future, but for my own vindication. There were moments of doubt, of course. Was I letting emotion cloud my judgment? Was this healthy? Was I becoming as cold and calculating as he had been? I pushed those thoughts away. Survival required strength. Strength required ruthlessness sometimes. They had shown me how the game was played. Now, I would show them I was a faster, smarter player. The deal was finally approved. The papers were signed. The acquisition was official. My company now owned theirs. The integration process began immediately, and as one of the lead architects of the acquisition, I was appointed to oversee the transition team, specifically focusing on aligning the acquired company's operations with ours. This meant site visits, meetings with their leadership, and, inevitably, interacting with their employees. The date for the first joint meeting was set. Our senior leadership team would meet with their senior team at their headquarters. I would be there, of course, front and center. I spent the days leading up to the meeting in a state of heightened calm. It felt like the quiet before a storm, the air still and heavy with anticipation. I chose my outfit carefully, a sharp, tailored suit in a powerful color. I wanted to look successful, formidable, completely in control. I wasn't dressing for him, or for her. I was dressing for myself, for the woman who had been broken but refused to shatter. I didn't know if my ex-husband would be at this meeting. He wasn't in a senior leadership role, so it was unlikely he'd be in the main boardroom. But Sarah? As an executive assistant, it was highly probable she would be involved in some capacity, preparing the room, bringing coffee, being present to take notes for her boss. The thought of seeing her again, in this context, made my stomach clench, but also ignited a cold, hard certainty. This was it. The moment of truth. The morning of the meeting, I woke up early. The city outside my window was just starting to stir. I felt no anxiety, only a strange sense of destiny. I went through my routine with a practiced calm. I reviewed my notes, mentally rehearsed the key points I needed to make. This was business. Purely business. That's what I told myself. I arrived at their headquarters precisely on time. It was a nondescript office building, solid and unremarkable. I was met in a lobby by a junior member of their team who escorted me and my colleagues to the executive floor. As we walked, my eyes scanned the faces we passed, a part of me bracing myself, another part detached, observing. We were shown into the main conference room. It was large, modern, with a polished wood table and comfortable chairs. Their leadership team was already there, standing and chatting amongst themselves. I recognized a few faces from the company's website and the organizational charts. There was a low hum of conversation, polite introductions being made. And then she walked in. She wasn't part of the leadership team, of course. She came in through a side door, carrying a tray of water bottles and glasses, presumably setting up for the meeting. She was wearing a simple but professional dress, her blonde hair neatly pulled back. She looked ordinary. Just a secretary doing her job. The woman who had loomed so large in my nightmares, who had represented everything I had lost, was just a person carrying water bottles. She didn't see me at first. She was focused on arranging the glasses on the table. My colleagues and I were standing near the entrance, waiting for the right moment to formally enter the room. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy, thick with unspoken tension. For me, at least. For everyone else, it was just another business meeting about to start. I watched her, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Pity? Contempt? A residual pang of pain? It was hard to disentangle. She was so unaware, so completely oblivious to the seismic shift that had occurred in her professional world, a shift directly orchestrated, in part, by the woman whose life she had helped dismantle. She finished arranging the water and turned, finally looking up. Her eyes swept across the room, taking in the faces of her company's leadership, then ours. And then they landed on me. Her smile, the polite, practiced smile of an executive assistant, faltered. Her eyes widened, just slightly at first, then her jaw slackened. The color drained from her face, leaving it pale and shocked. The tray in her hands tilted precariously, and one of the water bottles rolled off, hitting the carpet with a soft thud. She didn't even seem to notice. She just stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, with dawning horror. It was clear she recognized me immediately. How could she not? I was the ghost of the wife her relationship had helped bury. The plot twist was in her face. In the sudden, stark realization that the woman standing before her, impeccably dressed, radiating quiet authority, was me. The woman she had likely dismissed as a relic of her boyfriend's past. The woman whose suffering had, perhaps, been a footnote in her new happiness. And now that woman was here in her workplace, on her executive floor. One of my colleagues, noticing the dropped water bottle and Sarah's frozen state, stepped forward politely. "Are you all right?" he asked. Sarah didn't respond. Her gaze was still fixed on me, a look of utter bewilderment and fear in her eyes. She glanced quickly at the senior executives of her company, then back at me, a silent question hanging in the air. "Why are you here?" The head of their team, a man named Mr. Thompson, stepped forward, extending his hand to me. "Ms. Hayes," he said warmly, "welcome. We've been looking forward to this meeting." Ms. Hayes. My name. Spoken in the place where she worked, in the context of professional power and ownership. The sound seemed to snap Sarah out of her stupor, but only to replace the shock with a deeper understanding. Ms. Hayes was the lead from the acquiring company, the woman in charge, the new boss. I stepped forward, accepting Mr. Thompson's handshake. As I did, I met Sarah's eyes again. There was no triumph in my gaze, no sneer. Just a quiet, steady acknowledgement. I was here, and I was in charge. The silence stretched for a moment, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. Sarah stood frozen, the tray still clutched in her trembling hands. Her colleagues were looking at her, then at me, confusion flickering across their faces. They didn't understand the history here, the personal drama playing out in the professional arena. "Good morning," I said, my voice clear and calm, addressing the room but my gaze lingering on Sarah for just a fraction of a second longer than necessary. "I'm delighted to be here today as we begin the process of integrating our teams." Sarah finally seemed to grasp the full weight of the situation. Her face crumpled slightly, and she took an involuntary step back, bumping into the wall. She looked utterly blindsided, exposed, like a spotlight had been suddenly shone on her darkest secret. She hadn't just stolen a husband. She had, through his association with his company, unknowingly walked into the path of the professional powerhouse the discarded wife had become. Her casual disregard for my life had led her, directly, to kneeling at the foot of my corporate throne. She mumbled something, an inaudible apology perhaps, and quickly retreated through the side door she had entered, leaving the abandoned tray and water bottle behind. The senior executives in the room exchanged puzzled glances, but Mr. Thompson quickly smoothed it over, ushering us towards the table. As I took my seat at the head of the table, the designated lead for the acquiring company, I felt a wave of something complex wash over me. It wasn't pure joy or simple revenge. It was a profound sense of vindication, yes, but also a chilling awareness of the power dynamics at play. They had taken my personal life, but I had, in a way, taken their professional one. Not out of malice, not initially, but opportunity had presented itself, and I had seized it. My success, the very thing he had sometimes seemed to resent or dismiss, had led me here, to this moment, where I held their fate and hers in my hands. The meeting proceeded. We discussed synergy, operational efficiencies, future strategies. I was professional, focused, analytical. The brief, dramatic interlude with Sarah seemed to fade into the background, a small, almost insignificant moment in the grand scheme of a multi-million-dollar acquisition. But for me, it was the climax, the peak confrontation. Not a shouting match or a tearful scene, but a quiet, powerful moment of recognition and reversal. They had expected me to disappear, to fade away, wounded and defeated. Instead, I had risen, not just survived, but thrived, and in doing so, had placed myself in a position of undeniable authority over them. Later that day, I met with the HR department of the acquired company to discuss personnel matters during the transition. I saw Sarah's name on a list. I didn't single her out. I didn't need to. Her fate, and the fate of everyone else in that company, was now subject to the decisions made by my company. Aftermath. The meeting ended. I left the building, the air outside feeling fresh and clean after the controlled tension of the boardroom. I felt drained. The adrenaline that had propelled me through the morning began to dissipate, leaving behind a strange emptiness. I had won. Objectively, undeniably, I had won. Not just the professional battle, overseeing a successful acquisition, but the personal one too.
I had shown them.
I had proven that I was not disposable, not weak, not a victim. I had turned the tables in a way that was both devastatingly effective and undeniably satisfying. But the victory felt cold. It didn't erase the pain of the past year. It didn't magic away the memories of heartbreak and humiliation. It didn't fill the space where my marriage used to be. It was a different kind of satisfaction, a primal sense of justice served, a validation of my strength and resilience. I didn't revel in it. I didn't call friends to brag. I just drove home, the silence in my car a comfortable change from the forced conversations of the day. I had dinner alone, reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The woman who had sat frozen in a restaurant watching her life implode, was not the same woman who had chaired that boardroom meeting. The pain had changed me, hardened me in some ways, but also revealed a strength I hadn't known I possessed. I never spoke to my ex-husband or Sarah Jenkins again. Not directly, anyway. I heard through the grapevine that Sarah eventually left the company. It wasn't a dramatic firing. Simply, her position was eliminated during the restructuring that followed the acquisition. A casualty of corporate synergy. Or maybe, a quiet consequence of her past catching up with her in the most unexpected way. I didn't seek her out. I didn't need to see her go. The moment in the boardroom was enough. The look on her face was etched in my memory, a permanent record of the shift in power. My career continued to flourish. The acquisition was a success, solidifying my reputation as a formidable strategist. I focused my energy on building my life anew, not defined by the past, but shaped by it. I learned to trust myself again, to rely on my own judgment, to find happiness and fulfillment from within. The scar remained, a reminder of the wound and the healing. But it wasn't a mark of shame. It was a testament to survival, a symbol of the fire I had walked through and the strength I had found on the other side. I had lost a husband and a marriage, but I had gained myself. A harder, perhaps colder, but undeniably stronger version. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, that felt like the most profound victory of all. Life wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was mine again. And this time I was holding the pen. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced a betrayal that pushed you to find strength you didn't know you had, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. And if you feel like you want to hear more stories like this, subscribing helps bring them to life. Thank you for being here.